Rightio everyone, my name's Jack and I'm the Avid Assistant. Welcome to another video. So in this video I'm going to go through some tips for remote working. Just a few, mind you, because I'm quite rushed for time this week, but I may add to this later on. But this is something that we're all doing a lot more of these days. So whether you're remote working locally, like you've got the media here and you're sending in the cut, if you're working with an assistant that's elsewhere, or if you're remoting into someplace, here's a few little tips and tricks that I've picked up from working remotely that may be of use to you. Let's get started. Right, now, first things first, this is something that I've already mentioned in the A100 course, but just in case you haven't seen that, that is managing your MXF folders. So, under your Avid MediaFiles folder, inside there, inside MXF, we have all our Avid media, right? Now, each one of these numbered folders has got media in it, and it can just seem very chaotic here as to what it looks like, but there is a system. So I use the date, usually the full year, month, day written out, and inside that numbered folder, there'll be the picture, shoot days, media from that date. And I also add a little finder tag to it, and just with the name of the project. So this one was the treasurer. This is a project called Borderland. Do I have any other ones here? What's the purple one? MC 101. So yeah, a few different projects here. And if I'm working on a Windows machine, I can't use finder tags, but what I can do is just rename the folder. Now, a lot of people do this. Once Avid scanned it and it's added the .mdb, the little media database files, you can rename it. It no longer has to stay a number. And Avid will be able to read it just fine. And then you've got it categorized as to what it is. And as long as you have all this media organized, because then it helps to send it to facilities later and to send it between yourself and an assistant or whomever else. As long as you've got it organized, then you'll be hunky-dory. Now, the only thing to note if you're going to rename the folder after it's scanned is that later on, if for whatever reason you're having issues with the connection to the media and you need to regenerate those database files, you will have to rename this file to a number again for Avid to be able to do the rescan. Because even if you delete those MDB files, Avid won't be able to rescan it until this is renamed to something like this. Can definitely help when you need to send media to people later on. In the instance where you're working locally, remotely, as in you have the media here, and you're working with another collaborator, another editor, or another assistant, and you're going to be passing bins or projects back and forth with each other, highly recommend being on the same version of Avid. Not just the same year, but the exact same version, if at all possible. I don't, if there's conflicts between OSs or something, it may be a struggle. And I have worked on large projects where we're on different versions and it was okay, but you're more likely to run to less issues of compatibility and bugs and things if you're on the exact same version. And if you're not entirely sure of which version of Avid you currently have installed, I'll show you. So just find this icon up here in your Mac taskbar. If you're on Windows, it will be in the lower right down here. And hit click that, that'll be Avid link, and hit show. So you've got Avid link up here. This is what it looks like. And you can see this is everything that I have installed. This is under the products tab on the left here. If I go over to Media Composer, you can see I have installed 2022.10. So that's the version that I currently have installed, which is the latest. And now if you have to roll back a few versions, or if the other person has to come forward a few versions, let's go onto Avid's website, sign in, and you'll be able to find the download center. And from there you'll be able to download any previous version of Avid going back, a few years. And from there you'll be able to download any previous version of Avid going back the last few years and install that. If you're not sure of exactly what version to use or what's compatible with your operating system that you have at home or your machine, editor Chris Bove has made a brilliant website for this, which is called alwaysediting.com. So if you go there, and then up the top, there'll be a drop-down menu here called Avid Versions. If you click that and then go MC Qualified macOS or MC Qualified Windows OS. So I'll show you the macOS, and you'll be able to scroll down all the variations of Mac even the sub-variations of each release, and he has listed all of the versions of Media Composer that are qualified to run on that version. So this is the best and clearest way to find out which Media Composer you need to at least be on, minimum number you have to be on, depending on your OS. And of course he has this for Windows 2. So we jump to the Windows one. So you can see that Windows 11 Pro is qualified with 2020.10 back to 2021.12. So you can use that to know which version of Avid to install. But that being said, say you're an editor and you've got your cut ready for an export and you want to send an Avid bin of the latest cut to your assistant to make exports and uploads and various other things for you. Now, when you send them the bin, there may be sound effects or music or whatever other little pieces of media that you've added since the shoot, since they last got their media that they don't have on their end. So let me show you a method for gathering all the Avid media contained in a sequence. Not a consolidate, it's not changing anything, not shrinking it down. It's just copying all of the exact Avid media that's on the timeline to send along with your Avid bin to your assistant. And then I'll show you a follow-up way of sending just updates after that. So just the new media that's been added since your last thing. So let me demonstrate. So first off, in your timeline, make sure everything's there and everything's online. Go File, Export, and we're going to hit Options down here to create a new setting. And then up top, we're going to change this to AAF. And then under both video and audio, we're going to change this export method to copy all media. So then essentially it's just going to grab all the media that's contained in that timeline and copy the original transcodes from your Avid MediaFiles folder to whatever destination you set that we're going to set here. So make sure you do it in both tabs here, video and audio. Change it to copy all media. Then down here under media destinations, just set this as folder and same folder as AAF. That way you can set where your AAF gets exported to, you know, like a transfer folder or send folder, dated, however you like to work. I'll show you how I do it, then you can use that if you like. So yeah, we've got no marks, no selected tracks up here as well, so it's going to grab everything. Happy with that. You can save this as something like AAF copy all media. Now I'm not going to hit save there because I've already got this exact setting elsewhere, which I can show you. AAF copy media. And it looks the same. So I'll show you what happens if we export this out. So I would normally have a folder under my project folder called something like transfer. And then this would be all my sends. So today's date is the 30th of November. And then what I would do is in my dated folder, I'd create two subsequent folders. One called Avid Media and another called Avid Bins. And in the Avid Media folder, I'll export my AAF to there, and you'll see what it does, copying media file. And then it's going to copy all of the Avid Media MXF files that are associated with this sequence to exactly where I told the AAF to go. So I'm not going to let it finish here because this is going to take a little while and it's probably already copied enough to illustrate the point. So I'm just going to cancel this and then I'll jump to that folder, transfer this date, Avid Media, and you see it's created an Avid Media Files folder, an MXF and a 1. I would generally rename this 1 to just 2022 11:30, just to today's date, and that just makes it slightly easier for our editor because I can tell them just drop this numbered folder directly into your Avid MediaFiles MXF folder. Just drop it in there, Avid will see it, Avid will scan it, and you should be ready to roll. And now all we have to do is add the bin as well. So I'll tab back to Avid. We've got our bin locked cut. I can just make sure it's saved and it's up to date. Right click it in the sidebar and go reveal file. And then a Finder window will pop up with the bin. I can copy that into Avid bins. And now we have our package ready to send. So we have our lot cut and we have our MXFs. Nice. And then, so all we need to do is send this exact folder by whatever method you have available to you. So whether that is Media Shuttle or an FTP server or FrameIO or whatever else, you can zip this or not, or send it over. The package is ready to go. Now, let's take this one step further though. What if you made some slight tweaks to the cut and then you want to send the updated cut to your assistant or to whomever else, but you don't want to send all of the media again, you just want to send them the Avid media that's new that you've added since last time. Let me show you how to do it. There is a really neat way to do that in the new version of Avid. So I will always have a bin in Avid when I'm doing these types of projects called transfer to sort of mimic my folder on the outside. And every time I have a sequence that I send, I'll drop it in there and just rename it for the date that I sent, right? So there's the send. That sequence is all the media that I just sent, that I just exported the media files for. Right, now, just to make this sequence different and to add some new media, I'm just going to throw in a clip here. I'm just going to throw all of it in because it doesn't matter. That I know for a fact wasn't on the first sequence we sent. This is a take that was never used. So if I was to send this Avid bin to the same person that I sent the first send to, this clip here would be offline. So how would we circumvent that? Well, we go to send it, our package, the same way we did the last one, right? So do export, we'll create a new date. We're going to jump into the future right now. We're going to go 1201, which, as long as I get this done in time, it will be the same date that this video actually premieres, so it's like I'm talking to you in the present. And we'll create a new Avid bins and Avid media folders, and we'll go to export our media, all the same so far, but I'll make a slight tweak to my export settings. You'll see right under the export method option here, I have this option here called Ask to exclude video media from previous sequence. So this is under both video and audio. And what this means is that I can compare the sequence I'm exporting to a previous sequence. And I compare it to the previous sequence, and then any media that's in both sequences, it'll ignore, doesn't need to copy that. It'll only copy what's new to the current sequence you're exporting, which is literally exactly what we're trying to do. So if I have both those ticked, and I go save, I'd create a new preset for this, by the way. I've just hit save, but something like this: AAF copy media and AAF copy new media, and then you can just toggle between the presets when you need them. With this setting selected, I'll show you how it works. If I go to export it, save, I get this dialog box appears, and it's got a little drop down menu, and it's going to ask me to point to the sequence that I want to compare this one to. So I can do that. I'll go transfer, and then the date of the last one that I sent. I'll ask it to compare to that. Then I'll hit OK. And now, when it says copy media file, it says 1 of 1. Because there was only one new clip that had been added, it can tell that that's the only one that's different, and that's the only one it's going to copy out. Tab over to my transfer folder, and if we look in our 1201 Avid media, we only have one MXF file. So it's copied only what's new, and it's going to save us a lot of time, and depending on your internet connection, a lot of hassle with uploading stuff. So I'll just rename that 1201, drop that in there, and delete that one. And then there's the updated package with the new media, only what's changed, and the updated bin, and I'll drop the updated bin in Avid bins as well, and then that can be packaged, sent off to our assistant or VFX editor or whomever it is that needs it. Just remember that when you're done, to duplicate your sequence again, drop it into your transfer, and name it for the date that you sent, and now you've got that sequence ready to compare to next time when you go to send it again. Now, if you don't want to send all of the MXF files the first time, if you think they already have, previously they already have the MXF media for the majority of your timeline, there's another way to find out just what has to be sent. And I'll show you that just now. This is the historical way that I would do this, because the AAF and the compare thing is quite new. But I'll show you what I would normally do, the sort of tried and true method just now. So what I would tell them to do is at their end, when they get sent the timeline, is open that up in a bin. So say here like this lock cut, and then create another bin. I've got one called temp here. Do a right click in there, and do set bin display. And then once the bin display is on, tick this little show reference clips here. And now once that's ticked, whenever I drop a sequence in here and hit save, it's going to populate the bin with all the clips in that sequence. So if I hit show reference clips, go OK. Now before I drop the sequence in it, I'm going to do one more thing, and that's right click up here on the name, where the name column is, choose columns, and just find the one called offline. Sorted alphabetically, so it should be easy. There it is. Cool. So I've got that column here. So now if I make a copy of this and drop it into temp, hit save, we can sort our media by offline. And you see I've got one clip here that is offline, and that'll jump right to the top. So then you would get them to create a new bin, just drop that into it, or all the clips that are shown as offline, drop them into the bin and send that bin back to you. And now you have a bin of just what's offline. You can drop those onto a timeline and export out an AAF with the media and send that on with the cut. And now they'll have all the media that you need, and you're limiting how much big Avid media files that you're sending. So that covers how you would send media back and forth with Avid collaborators that you're working remotely with. Now first off, if you're running the Avid project at home on your own machine, and you're not in a facility, you don't have tech support available to you necessarily, you'll have to be your own tech support. And so for that, I'm just going to point you to another video I did. It is one of my older ones, so it's a bit long, but there's chapter markers so you can skip through it. And that is 10 common fixes for when Avid's not working. So these are the things to try, that if you're at home, you're using your own Avid, and things aren't quite working, here's a list of things in that order that I would try going through first to see if you can fix the problem. Now, obviously, a good old-fashioned restart is always the first one that I would try. Also, to mention, you should probably restart your machine every now and again anyway. Try not to have 1,000,001 tabs open in Chrome while you're working. I don't know how much RAM you've got, but Avid likes to have a decent amount of it available. RAM and the CPU are probably the two things that Avid uses the most. If you've got a fancy-dancy new, NVIDIA 4090, it's not really going to do much for Avid, I'm afraid. Right, now let's talk about the other type of remote working, where you're actually remote controlling an Avid remotely from a remote location. Remotely. So in these cases, your production or the post facility who's providing the Avid will give you some coaching at the start, and they'll show you what software you're using, what VPN client, there's a whole bunch of different ones nowadays that you could be using, but they'll coach you through that and how to log in and get you started. But there are a few ways that you can improve things at your end. First of all, I would make sure your machine is plugged into your router, or wired into your internet source at home via Ethernet. Try not to be on Wi-Fi if you can help it for stuff like that. Ethernet will just provide a much better latency. It's not necessarily just about download or upload speed. It's about that response time and the latency. And if you're trying to judge audio sync and play stuff back correctly in sync, then you're going to want that really low latency that Ethernet can provide. Also, if you're able to get fiber internet where you are, then all the better. Moving on, One other thing that I noticed has been annoying a lot of people when they remote in is Mac versus Windows. I don't know, before anyone starts, I'm not getting into what's better or what's worse. I've used both, and I will continue to use both, and I know the pros and cons, and we're not that kind of channel, people. But if you're a Mac user like all the time, and you're regularly going to a facility where you use Macs, or you've got a Mac at home and you're always using it at home, but then you're remoting into a Windows, or vice versa, your modifier keys, where on a Mac that will always be the command key, or on a Windows it will always be control, like copy and paste, for example, they'll be programmed into your muscle memory, particularly on your own keyboard at home. And they have led to some people making mistakes, or copying the wrong one, or tagging the wrong one, and just getting really annoyed because they have to consciously think about something that's normally second nature. So I want to show you a couple of ways that you can fix that. So firstly, if you're doing it on the Mac side, it's slightly easier, and let me show you. You just come up here to the Apple logo and go to System Preferences. Then in here, just find Keyboard. It's over here for me, but it may vary depending on which iteration of macOS you're on. But click on Keyboard. Then there'll be an option under the Keyboard tab called Modifier Keys. So if you jump in there, you can switch which key enacts which function. So at the moment, Control key does Control key, Command key does Command key. Makes sense. But if I wanted, I could swap those around. And I could make that do Control and that do Command. And then if I was a Windows user remoting into this Mac, that would completely solve that problem for me. And then hitting Control would do the command function at the remote end, and you'd be able to do, copy, paste without thinking about it. Now, say you want to do this in the Windows end. Maybe you're remoting into a Mac and you don't have permissions to change that in System Preferences, but you could do it at your local Windows machine to fix the issue. I found a page here. I haven't had to do this before, but I have found a page that describes exactly how to do it, and I've tested it out on my Windows machine that I'm remoting into at work, and this does work. And this is using an app called Sharpkeys. So you would just have to download this utility, very, very simple, and it allows you to patch one key to another within Windows very easily. So I'll have the link to that in the video description, as well as a link to another article describing the Mac method that I showed before, but that was demonstrated pretty well, I think. So those will be there for you. Now, what about video review? Now, these days we have so many options when it comes to sites to send for video review. We can use YouTube and Vimeo links. We have FrameIO, we have Pix and Dax, and a whole bunch of other ones, SigSketch, whatever else, and a whole various different price points as well, with different features. And if you're on your own and it's up to you to make the decision because you're working remotely as the editor, then you might not be sure which one to go with. Now, this is assuming that your production hasn't already dictated what you're supposed to use, but I'm going to make a suggestion of my two favourites that are both quite different, and it depends what the situation calls for. So first off, I'm going to say FrameIO. In terms of video review, I personally think this is the best one out there. We can upload cuts. We can upload cuts and files to be downloaded at the other end, whatever kind of file type you want. We can add password protected links. We can, we can invite collaborators into our project to work with us. Let me show you. See, I have an older project that I can show you. So yeah, so here, see here, I've got the treasurer uploaded, the lock cut from a good while ago. If I open it up, I can see there's a couple of comments that I've prepared earlier, where I can click on a comment that's been made by someone, and in this case it's me, and it will jump straight to that time-coded point. They can even annotate and draw shapes and stuff on straight onto the image to really highlight the point home. When it's done, you can mark stuff as complete, you can delete comments, erase them, you can download them and put them into Avid as markers, and instructions on how to do all this is up on FrameIO, and there's so much more that I haven't gone into that you can do on FrameIO, like marking status, whether it needs review or it's approved, more share functions that I didn't go into. But it's just a really good tool for reviewing cuts and for doing projects remotely. I've used it on multiple short films. The first feature film that I cut, Northspur, we used this to review all the cuts. Yeah, it's really great. But if you're on a budget and if you're having to pay for this, if it's an indie production or something that you're doing remotely, it can get a little bit expensive. So if you're on a budget and it's a low budget indie thing, or it's a short film, and you don't really want to pay for something like this just for a free or low budget project, my preferred one would be SwissTransfer. Now SwissTransfer is essentially like WeTransfer, it's the same kind of thing, but the free version of it has a lot of the features of the paid version of WeTransfer. So if I upload a file here, and unlike WeTransfer, my file size limit is 50 gig, not 2. I can password protect my links. I can get a link to send in an email. I don't need to let SwissTransfer send it out, although you can do it that way as well. I can set links to expire if I like. And like I said, all this is free. So if you just add a watermark to your exports, then you could send them directly the file with SwissTransfer. And if they have lower internet that doesn't do streaming too well at the receiving end, this might work better for you. Anyway, I've done a couple of short films where we used this as well. Those are my 2 suggested options, one of many these days. But if you're looking for an option for video review, there's 2 that you can use. And if you do it via SwissTransfer, just add a timecode burn-in onto your export, and then they can just send you notes from that referring to the timecode. Like the good old days. Right guys, as I said, I really don't have much time tonight. This was supposed to be a really quick record because I'm trying to jam this in the night before it's meant to be up, and I still have to edit it. And somehow the record is at nearly an hour. We're at 57 minutes because I just couldn't stop yapping. So I'm going to wrap it up there, and I'm just going to say thank you very much for watching. Thank you especially to all the Patreon subs. I really do appreciate that extra little bit of support, guys. Really have no idea how much I do. And yeah, so until I see you in the next video, please, give this one a like, comment with anything else that I missed. If there's anything more on remote working that you wanted me to cover and I didn't, tell me and I can. And yeah, give the video a share. Tell your friends. The channel needs you, people. Share it far and wide. See you next time.